So I've got Imber here today, and he's going to help us with the snake totem. He's still kind of new to things, so you might have seen him in some other videos. I've been taking him out whenever I can, just to get him used to things, and so he's been in a few other videos if you've watched any of the other ones. But today it's actually, what we're talking about actually has to do, with him, so to speak, not him, I guess, specifically, but his totem. So the snake totem has a lot of circle magic in it and a lot of knot magic, knotting or tie magic, binding knot magic, that sort of thing. They also have a lot of wisdom and rebirth. They are very, associated much with the earth and the ground. That element. They're very, very, mud, earth, ground energy. So they are said to be very, very wise, and a lot of the wisdom, comes from a lot of the knot and spiral circle energy. Really, it's more circle and knot than spiral. But when you talk about what that means exactly, it's got a wide variety of potential uses and meanings. But when you talk about circle and knot, it's like everything is interconnected. Everything is connected to one another. And when you're talking especially about the spiraling of the universe, everything is intertwined and connected. There's nothing that isn't separate, really. It's all connected in some way. And so a lot of that wisdom is like this sort of wisdom of the universe, so to speak. It's that interconnection. Unfortunately, in Abrahamic culture, they see this as a very, it's exceptionally demonizing how they see this totem. They don't even believe in totems, but they demonize the animal out the ass, But in most pagan and most indigenous cultures, you'll find that we don't at all find them anywhere near. It's the exact opposite, actually. It is considered a protector. It is a cleanser, potentially, and a protector. Now, in, I believe, Asian culture, there's a few beliefs that even go as high as to say that, it's right up there with, they're sort of considered, maybe not exactly, but they're considered very close, if not highly related to the dragon totem. And that's got a lot of, power, knowledge, wisdom, kind of, I won't say exactly the same as paganism, but it's some of it's eerily similar. So I don't know enough about it to say for sure whether or not it either is like a cousin to the dragon totem in that culture, or whether it is considered a type of dragon totem. I don't know. You'd have to ask them. In paganism, usually it's not really considered dragon. Really, in paganism, when you're talking about dragon, you're usually referring to a little more literal, and the kind of dragon that is more so the mythical side of things and the spirit realm side of things, maybe. So really, when you're talking about snake totem, it's a type of serpent, really, in paganism. And really any serpent energy has got similarities, but when you find that different species of anything have different meanings. And Imber, for example, he's a ball python. He's got some really unique energy that a lot of other serpents of different species may not necessarily have. What is unique to the ball python is that when they get defensive, when they feel threatened, instead of, striking, instead of, running away or striking, their very first defense is usually to go into a little ball, to really ball up into a little ball. And Ember doesn't ball up much anymore because he's getting used to people. But when I first started taking him out, he stayed in the ball. He stayed in his little tight ball for like 15-20 minutes ever coming out. And when I looked at the way he was balling himself up, it was very interesting to watch the way that he would ball himself up. He would spiral. He's got a spiraling energy in the way that he'll literally spiral himself into that ball, and then he'll tie his head. He'll put his head underneath, and he'll almost tie it to his tail. It's like he's spiraling himself, and then he's knotting himself. And in paganism, there are no accidents. What animals do, what they do, we talked about the goat having a lot of balance, that totem having a lot of literal balance, like a yin-yang balance, and they can literally physically balance on the edge of a 90-degree angle cliff. I mean, literally, have you seen those things? So, same thing with this, right? He is literally spiraling and literally knotting. And that spiral and knotting magic, in paganism, we believe that any time an animal does that, that shows signs of that, especially such obvious signs of that they are actually doing magic when they're doing that. So that's what paganism believes. That's not, especially ancient paganism. I don't know, maybe some modern paganism doesn't go that far, but that's what ancient paganism believes. And ancient paganism, it does differ a bit, because you're talking about what our ancestors believe in versus the twisted and warped part of modern society. That sometimes there's gaps, sometimes it's actually been changed in some way. What we used to think for tens of thousands of years, suddenly in modern day society has changed. And so, you've only got about 100 or so years, 150 maybe years, where it's vastly different. And I like to put it this way, I've said this before, but just in case you're new to the channel and you haven't watched anything else, it's like this. Think about the witch hunt era and how many people died out how fast. A lot of that wisdom and knowledge simply died out with them, and then it became sort of like a game of telephone. What knowledge was still passed down, what was still be able to pass down, was incomplete in a lot of cases. And it was like you were hearing only half the story, like a game of telephone. You're trying to, the best you can, fill in the gaps for what you not sure you heard correctly, or what you didn't hear at all. And when you start filling in the gaps of things and trying to just guess, that's kind of where, as you know, with the game of telephone, that's just if you've ever played it before as a child, you know just how different the outcome ends up being when people start adding their own assumptions and their own, thoughts into those gaps of missing information, just how different the message ends up being. And so really that's kind of why I stick to ancient paganism, because I believe too much is not full, it's not complete, it's not whole. When you're doing modern paganism, you don't get a full picture of it, and sometimes it's even a misconception. So a lot of, unfortunately, modern paganism, without even realizing it, sometimes even can be influenced by other modern beliefs like Abrahamics and we don't realize it until we start actually looking at. I'm not saying it's that way with the serpent, I'm not. But with other things it could be. With some symbols and things it is, and I won't get into that in this video, but you know, basically, when you're talking about the snake totem, it's such an old, ancient totem, and it does bring in a lot of that ancient wisdom and that ancient knowledge. The snake totem actually can be a really good teacher for that ancient ancestral wisdom. And so it kind of makes sense anyway, when you're talking about the snake totem, to go more so by what our ancestors said versus, you know, what may or may not. And honestly, I don't, for this totem in particular, I don't know the differences between just how different or similar it might be in modern paganism or ancient paganism. Typically, if I don't know, that's probably a good thing, because it means it's probably got more parallel than not. I scared him. I'm sorry. He's still getting used to things. Any really fast movement, sometimes he's like, oh, what's that? So he's still a baby. He's only about a year old. And we just slowly getting him used to things. Poor thing, I scared him. He's just got a natural timid and shy personality on top of that. So some would come out of their shell sooner than he would. But he was slow to come out of his shell, and he's still sort of coming out of his shell. So we apologize for that. But that's why I take him out any chance I get to do stuff like this, because when I'm just sitting there and holding him, you know, I'm usually a lot slower because I'm a little more aware of my movements when all I'm doing is holding him. And when I do something like this, it forces me to be less aware, and then I do stuff on accident like that, and then it kind of just naturally gets him, without me overdoing it, naturally gets him used to stuff like that. So eventually we'll hopefully get to the point where he's like my other snake that I had a long time ago, where, you know, nothing bothers him and kids can scratch him like a dog and things. But right now we're still getting him used to everybody. He's doing a phenomenal, fabulous job anyway. He's doing a wonderful job. He's always been very patient with me. You can see that there are some markings on here. He's got a phoenix on his neck, and I don't know if you can see that. He's got that's upside down, but when he's right side up, can we right side up you? He's got a phoenix there, a rising phoenix on his neck. There goes Nessie, upside down Nessie. Oops. Which really, you know, I mean, I don't really know what that is. I always call it Nessie. And then he's got a phase wheel. It's a little bit lopsided, but he's got a phase wheel right there. So I thought that was kind of neat and interesting. And you can even start to look at the little different blobs and see perhaps maybe some. This is interesting. He's got. Could you please? There's a jack-o'-lantern on his tail. So yeah. But I just wanted to point out, you know, a lot of these things do have meaning. A lot of times you get these animals with markings, and they actually do have meaning to them. They've got these markings. Nature gave them these markings for a reason, I believe. Every marking that they have means something, usually. And when he spirals, you'll notice that he's brown, white, brown, white, brown, white, brown, white. When he spirals, he makes a wheel out of the brown and the white. It's amazing, but he's not doing it right now, so I can't show you that. So yes, markings actually do mean something, and sometimes it's so obvious that it could only mean one thing, but a lot of times you get in cases, like with a lot of Ember's markings, where it's up to interpretation. So, you know, really it just depends on the marking, but any totem, anywhere, if it has a marking, it usually means something.